Okay, so there you go. Let's find out the position of the law on this matter and a lot more concerning how the judiciary function and expectations from them. Let's head to Abuja for that, Mark.
Well, yes, indeed, Chamberlain. This impeachment saga started some months ago and has finally culminated in the impeachment of the Deputy Governor of Kogi State. Now, whether it has been properly done, because he maintains he's still the Deputy Governor legally by law, whether it's been properly done or whether there were grounds for it, we have a senior advocate of Nigeria to help us dissect the matters this morning. Here's Ebun Olu Adegborua. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning and congratulations.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, you have seen the drama playing out in Kogi State. You have seen, you know what the law says concerning, the processes that must be followed in the impeachment of a governor or his deputy. Would you say that that process has been followed in this matter?
Unfortunately, no. Section 188 of our Constitution itemized the procedure for removal of a governor or deputy governor. Allegations will be raised by the House of Assembly. That allegation will be served on the person to be impeached, whether he responds or not. They will then table it within the floor of the House. And if they find it worthy of further investigation, the Speaker will request the Chief Judge of the state to set up a panel to investigate. The panel within 3 months will turn in its report. If the report of the panel proves the allegations and there is an indictment from the panel, the House of Assembly will then go into a full session and decide whether to impeach or leave the person. In the case of Kogi State, that panel was set up by the Chief Judge, headed by Mr. John Baisha. And they submitted their report just Friday. And the chairman of that panel said they could not prove any of the allegations against the deputy governor. Section 188, sub 8 of the Constitution is clear. Once the allegations against the governor or the deputy cannot be proved by the panel, there will be no further proceedings. The matter ends there. There will be no deliberation in the House, how much less of an impeachment, because at that point, the person has been cleared, so to say. So there's no further proceedings. The case dies automatically. So there are two problems with what is going on in Kogi State. As of Friday, when this report was submitted, the Kogi State House of Assembly was on holiday, as it were, from what we heard, even though they can convene at the request of the Speaker. The second thing is that the full House of Assembly of Kogi State has no local standard. They have no power in law to override the report of the panel to find the deputy governor guilty if he's been cleared by the panel. So the basis of impeachment is lacking. The condition precedent for that impeachment does not exist in law. And so what the Kogi State House of Assembly claimed to have done has no basis in law at all. And I would not be surprised it will be set aside by the relevant court when that is challenged by the deputy governor.
Well, now the deputy governor maintains that he's still the deputy governor, citing the same basis, the fact that the panel did not find him, did not indict him on any of the charges that were brought before them. And he says, I'm still the deputy governor. However, we understand that, plans are already being made to install another deputy governor today. Is it possible for him to keep acting in the office as deputy governor, knowing that things were not properly done? Meanwhile, it's already been enforced that he is already out of office. How would you advise that he proceeds?
I think we've had a similar experience as what is going on in Kogi State now in Imo State, under the former governor, Rochas Okorocha, when he purported to impeach his deputy, Chief Madumere. The first thing for the deputy governor of Kogi State to do is to approach the court this morning, today, unfailingly.
The governor of Kogi State or the deputy?
The deputy governor of Kogi State to approach the court this morning unfailingly to seek judicial interpretation of the actions of the Kogi State House of Assembly. In the case of Imo State, even though the Imo State House of Assembly claimed to have impeached the deputy governor, the judiciary stepped in to save the nation of the constitutional embarrassment because judges refused to swear in the alternative deputy governor, knowing that the due process of law had not been followed. I think it's for me to call on the Chief Judge of Kogi State, Honorable Justice Ajana, to ensure that no judicial officer is allowed to conduct any swearing for any other person apart from following the due process of law. Because no deputy governor can assume office without being sworn in by a judge, especially the chief judge of the state. And you know the history of Kogi State. We have a governor who does not believe in due process. At a particular time, he attempted to sack the chief judge, a particular function for which the chief judge was officially invited. He walked him out. This same deputy governor has been denied his salary and allowances. He does not have any vote. He does not control any financial vote at all. So how do you cook up an allegation of financial impropriety against somebody who has no power over the finance of the state? So, and the worrisome aspect of what is going on in Kogi State is not just the illegality. This is a state that is supposed to conduct election a few moments from this time. For a governor who is seeking vote from people to have such temerity at this time to do what is going on in Kogi State now, I fear for the election itself. Because what the message that we're getting from Kogi State now is that there's some kind of assurance on the part of the governor that come what may, I will win this election. I don't care about public opinion. I don't care about the voters. Because somebody who is seeking to be re-elected in office will be taking policies that will be popular to sell him to become acceptable to the people. And for you to take such steps as is going on in Kogi State now and be ready to face the electorate, it just shows that there's some kind of assurance that the governor has that he will win this election come what may.
Yeah, but we don't know what is going on, I mean, very clearly between himself and the deputy governor. What we do know is that he seems to have the backing of the State House of Assembly for them to have, you know, convened extraordinarily and then to have impeached the governor in spite of whatever the report says. Doesn't it show that maybe he's got some political backing within the state?
I think that when you talk about the powers of a governor, the Constitution has created more like a civilian dictator in the governor, in the president. And you will have seen that in some states like Bayelsa in the past, the governor was removed. In some states like Oyo State, Senator Rashid Ladoja was removed. In some states like Plateau State, Joshua Darie was also removed in controversial circumstances. And we've been heaving some sigh of relief since the advent of this administration, because we've not seen those kind of scenario where 7 people out of 12, or where people just gather suddenly and then you hear that the governor has been removed, the speaker has been impeached. So I think that the All Progressive Congress, which is the ruling party, has a responsibility to save our democracy. That's why the Constitution makes it mandatory that the person occupying the office of governor must run on the same political party with his deputy. Because the expectation is that they will have the same focus. They will be subject to the same political discipline and political authority. And it is mandatory and imperative on the part of the ruling party, the All Progressive Congress, to intervene in what is going on in Kogi State now and ensure that due process of law is followed and our Constitution is not compromised in any way at all.
I'm wondering if he goes to court. I mean, you just pointed out the fact that in a couple of weeks now, I think sometime in November 8th or so, Kogi State will be going to the polls. I mean, I've wondered what the hurry is. I mean, there's going to be fresh elections. If you don't want this deputy, you can always run with another running mate, you know, and if you're elected with him, he will be the new deputy governor. Do you see that justice will be carried out assuming, you know, the deputy governor, I don't know, impeached as it stands, I don't know, if he decides to go to court, can it be served in such a way that we can say that he will still have a reasonable time in office to say, I got justice from the courts?
Well, I think that when we ask people to approach the courts, the purpose is to be able to restate the position of the law. Time may not be of the essence. In this case, for instance, it's unlikely that this same deputy will run on the same ticket for the re-election, from what we have seen. So he's already out, as it were. Even if he were to be allowed to exhaust his tenure currently, he will probably not be allowed to recontest with the current governor. So in advising the deputy governor to go to court, it may not be securing immediate remedy for him, but to ensure that impunity is not allowed to reign, and that he sets the record straight, so that in future when you want to refer to him, you can say that he was once a deputy governor, because this impeachment has consequences for his career, for his tenure. So it will be for him to file that case, hoping that he will follow it through. It may even get to Supreme Court.
Does it even have any consequences? Recall that, I think it was in Ekiti State, when the then governor tried to run again. You know, the questions of, oh, he was impeached came up. Can he really run? What consequences does impeachment really hold in our Constitution?
Well, I think I was talking purely from the point of view of financial consequences. In some of these states, the governors have so much pushed the House of Assembly to enact bills meant to secure their future financially. In some states like Lagos, like Rivers, huge money is allocated to those who have occupied the office of governor and deputy. They are given houses in Abuja, they're entitled to medical allowance, they are given cars, and they are paid huge sums of money. As you will know, in Lagos State, for instance, the former deputy governor, Pedro, did everything to ensure that he went back to the house and the process leading to his impeachment was reversed, and he was confirmed as a deputy governor, and he's earning that title up to now. So when I was talking about consequences, I'm looking at what happens to him in terms of pension, in terms of records, when you refer to those who have occupied positions of power in the state. If the impeachment is allowed to stand illegally, as it were, then he will probably not be entitled to those benefits. But politically, it's of no consequence to his career. He can always contest any election despite the impeachment.
Okay. Let's quickly go to Lagos now and take some questions from my colleagues. Chamberlain?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mark. But, you know, for those who usually look to the will of justice, how it grinds, is there nothing that can be done to improve the perception that the people have of the judiciary, such that in cases such as this one, they can thump their chest, the public now will see that justice will be served and the wheels of justice grind a little faster than it does? Because if you say this matter may even get to the Supreme Court, that's going to take a while. Well,
it's not necessarily. I'll give you an instance. In the case of the former president of the Senate, Senator Bukola Saraki, who was tried by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. He will challenge the verdict of the tribunal in the Court of Appeal up to the Supreme Court. And it took less than 6 months for that case to be decided finally. I think we have gotten to a stage in our national life when we must be concerned about speedy dispensation of justice, especially in criminal justice administration. And it is for the executive in particular, the state governors, to allow the judges operate independently with also financial autonomy. As you will recall, in the last conference of the NBA, the Chief Justice of Nigeria came to our conference and stated categorically that the judiciary is not free. At the swearing of senior advocates, which commenced a new legal year for the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice also restated it, that they go begging for funds. And to that extent, there is no freedom, there is no independence, there is no autonomy for the judiciary. So what we are witnessing within our national life presently is calamitous. And we need to declare some kind of state of emergency in our judicial sector. It is unfortunate that judges still write in longhand. I'll give you an example in terms of welfare of judges. In Lagos State, the last time salary of judges were increased is 2007, during the tenure of the Honorable Attorney General then, Professor Yemi Osibajo. And you check the life of judges, compare them to the executive or the legislature, you discover that there's not enough being done to take care of their welfare. There's not enough being done to ensure that we have speedy dispensation of justice. Lagos State is approaching a population of 20 million. The judges in Lagos State presently sitting and functioning are less than 50. So you see a judge has about 600 cases to tackle. So relating that to Kogi State, what we need to do as a nation is to ensure that people get judgment that has justice. Because in this case, for instance, probably before judgment will be delivered, go to Court of Appeal, go to Supreme Court, the elections will have held, and probably a new deputy governor will have been sworn in. But I think the remedy we can get today is that if the chief deputy governor files a case in court this morning, today, that should be sufficient to prevent the chief judge from allowing any judge in that state to swear in any other person as deputy governor. We must teach a lesson to those who want to go by impunity, that there are other means by which you can also checkmate. That's the spirit of checks and balances and separation of powers. So I think the governor having gotten the House of Assembly to do his bidding by proceeding with this impeachment when there was no basis for it, is for the judiciary, which is empowered by law to checkmate the excesses of the other arms of government, to stand firm and be courageous and refuse to be part of this impunity and save our democracy. I think that will be a lesson for others if that is done in Kogi State.
You know, perhaps another way to ensure that this does not even get to the courts in the first place, you know, is to ensure that the process leading up to this is done well. And this is not the first time we've had, you know, issues with state assembly in Nigeria where there are controversies, I mean, interpretations, there are different sides. And it calls to question, you know, what kind of, you know, process, what kind of onboarding technique they get before, you know, they get into the House of Assembly. So the question is there something that can be done to ensure that for an arm of government that makes laws, they can, you know, at least approach this better such that it doesn't spill into this kind of controversy?
I think the first thing you will realize from what is going on in Kogi State now is that we need to interrogate the credentials of people that are elected into the various legislative houses. I watched the proceedings of the so-called impeachment of the deputy governor, and the person who was making a case for that impeachment went on rampage talking about how the governor has accumulated and amassed accolades for security, you know, and he had nothing whatsoever to say concerning the provisions of the Constitution. If you check section 188 sub 8 of the Constitution, it's so express, there's no ambiguity. It says that once the panel that has been set up to investigate the deputy governor returns a verdict that the allegations could not be proved, the proceedings terminate. No further steps shall be taken. It's not ambiguous. So I believe that most of the people that we end up pushing to the legislative houses don't even have a working understanding of the Constitution that they are supposed to operate. And so in that regard, they are easy to manipulate. They are easy to fall prey to the whims and caprices of the executive, who in most cases are the ones originating this confusion. So I think it's for Nigerians to begin to ensure that those who represent us in the various houses of assembly and the National Assembly are people who are well educated, people who have their own means of livelihood, and who can stand up and be courageous to be on the side of the Constitution which they sworn when they were being elected into office.
A quick one, Mr. Adegura. The allegation against the governor is gross misconduct. And the Constitution that you quoted the other time, 2B of Section 188 says, gross misconduct in the performance of the functions. And sub 11 says that gross misconduct is defined as the House of Assembly defines it. That seems to leave so much space for the House of Assembly to interpret it anyhow. Moving on, is there anything that can be done? Because you also quoted some other governors that have done the similar thing based on gross misconduct. And of course, the House of Assembly in Kogi is citing actions against the governor. So is there anything that can be done to that section of the law so it doesn't just get interpreted just like that and pretty much a disgrace to the democracy, as some would say.
Thank you very much. The section you refer to, defining gross misconduct in the process of impeachment of president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor, is not at large. Gross misconduct there is related to the proceedings of the panel that has been set up to investigate. That gross misconduct will be at the end of the day when the panel finds the allegations against the incumbent to have been proved. If the House of Assembly proceeds to act on the report of the panel that is submitted proving the allegations as true, then their decision can then be termed as gross misconduct. That's one. Number two, the gross misconduct referred to in the Constitution is in respect of the allegations to be set up against the person to be impeached. So when you formulate those allegations, you submit that to the panel. If the panel comes back to say there is no gross misconduct, there is no financial misappropriation, there is no insubordination, there is nothing at all we could find against the person that you asked us to investigate, you cannot then fall back and reject the report of the panel and cook up some gross misconduct on your own to claim to impeach the occupant of that office. So by that gross misconduct, what the Constitution says is that the House is entitled to act on the report of the panel if it finds the occupant guilty. In that case, you cannot question them because gross misconduct then will be related to the report of the panel. But going forward, like I said, I think that we have gotten to a stage in Nigeria when people should demand transparency, when people should demand good governance. I cannot understand the situation where civil servants have not been paid. I cannot understand the situation where a deputy governor has not been paid his salary for years. And then the state is calm, nobody's raising an eyebrow, there's no protest going on, there's not a single whimper from the Nigerian Labour Congress, from the Nigerian Bar Association in that state, or from the press, or from civil society organizations. We cannot sit down and allow politicians to ruin the democracy that people sacrifice their lives and liberty for. We should stand up as a nation. By this morning, I expected people to be at the House of Assembly in Kogi State, raising up protests. It's not because of the personality of the deputy governor. It can be somebody else in future. We shouldn't allow this kind of process to stain and taint our democracy. We shouldn't allow this kind of process to send a wrong signal to the entire world that we are not ready to move forward. And I think it's quite unfortunate that the youngest governor among all the governors is the one perpetrating this kind of illegality. It's quite unfortunate. And I think the people of Kogi State should summon courage and rise up and challenge this impunity.
As for salaries, though, I think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Only recently, I think about 30 billion naira was approved in terms of aid to help, excuse me, take care of salaries. But I'm wondering, assuming the courts do find that there was no basis for this, should there be consequences for those who carried out such an illegality?
Well, I think that, for instance, if this case goes to court and the court returns a verdict of acquittal for the deputy governor, then all those involved in the impeachment process, the speaker who presided over the House, the legislator who stood up and moved a motion that has no basis in law, all those who are involved in that process should be marked for history, should not be allowed to contest election by people of that state, should be marked out to ensure that their record goes into a black book for the people of Kogi State. Their record goes into a black book for democracy in Nigeria. And I think it's a responsibility of the chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Comrade Adamson Shomale, given his pedigree, given his history, in terms of the rich advocacy that we have known him for. I cannot imagine that he is supervising a party that is carrying out what is going on in Lagos and Kogi State. I think that it's important that those consequences should be reserved for those who participated in this illegality if the court finds that there's no basis for this impeachment.
Well, sir, we have to thank you so much for sharing your very candid thoughts with us this morning. Ebun Oluwadegboruwa is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and we're talking about the impeachment saga in Kogi State. Sunrise Early continues in a moment. Please stay with us.